Well, hello guys. Welcome to another episode of the World Football Summit podcast. We are recording live from World Football Summit Europe in Sevilla. And today I am thrilled to finally welcome to the show Ebru Koksal, is someone who I've been trying to connect with for the podcast for quite some time. And I'm thrilled because she's going to talk to us about a program that I think is going to do a lot of good for the industry. But before going into details, Ebru, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. As you know, I'm a big fan of World Football Summit. I've been attending since the first edition and very happy to see how it's grown over the years to be one of the most influential conferences in the industry.
Thank you, Ebru. I mean, kind words, but I mean, at the end of the day, speakers like yourself, people here are what makes our events great. So thank you for that as well. Ebru, today we're going to talk about the Open Door agenda. For those that don't know, this is a program that has potential to have a lot of impact. Before going into what it is, I want to understand kind of like the context. Why was this necessary for the industry?
First of all, the organization that I proudly chair, Women in Football, is a non-profit that is based in the UK but has expanded beyond the borders to include 10,000 members globally. Not only women, but man and non-binary members as well, who are all there to support, champion, and ensure a successful leadership of women in the industry and equal access, whether it's on the pitch, on the side of the pitch, or all the way up to the boardroom. So, as an organization that always champions equality, last summer, end of the summer, we were actually faced with a very difficult situation. I was personally at the Women's World Cup in Australia, and during the final, we started receiving messages during the ceremony that something terrible is happening on the pitch, and we put our heads together and wanted to make sure that the industry is never faced with situations like that again, where someone in power thinks that their behavior could be excused, let's say, and that everyone should think twice before committing, acts of discrimination and borderline abuse, obviously. And that there are people who would always stand up when there is some wrongdoing. And on the back of that, we decided to launch the global campaign Open Doors agenda.
Well, as a Spaniard, I must say that was an unfortunate situation, especially when it was supposed to be a time of celebration for the country, but unfortunately it wasn't. So I'm glad to see that, in a way, it sparked kind of like it was the trigger to launch this initiative. What is it? What is the Open Door? Can you...
Well, first of all, we tried to identify what went wrong. And a lot of the times it boils down to lack of good governance. And so we decided the best way to promote good governance is to put out 6 very basic principles that are embraced by the whole world and maybe are a little bit late coming into football and the wider sport, let's say. But so the name obviously comes from a speech of President Gianni Infantino during the Women's World Cup Women's Football Summit. He addressed the audience, which was predominantly, female, and he told the women in the room, to the women, I'm telling you, the doors are open. All you have to do is push the doors. Come and tell us, man, what to do to make the football industry more gender equal and inclusive. So we took inspiration from his call to action and called our campaign Open Doors agenda. And what it entails is we think the biggest problem is the predominantly male composition of the decision-making bodies within the football's governing organizations. And when we look globally, whether it's at the member associations, 211 of them, no more than 2-3 female presidents, and very few actually had female board members on them. The same thing with the leagues, the same thing with the clubs. In the Premier League, only 9% of the current board directors are women. So We think it's a problem of the prevailing culture, male-dominant culture, and the blind spots that are created by not having diverse voices around decision-making tables. So the number one call to action within Open Doors agenda was to have minimum 30% women on the boards of the governing bodies and football organizations. Yes, and besides that, we all know how difficult it is to be A, nominated for election, B, to be elected to the board. Therefore, to increase the chances of women and also much needed skill set to be joining these boards, we said there has to be non-executive directors on each of these boards. And I would say probably UK is the best example for this. The FA recruits non-executive directors which hold the majority votes. The chair is professionally recruited and is an amazing leader, Debbie Hewitt. We really appreciate what she's done for the football industry, not just in the UK, but globally as well. And when you open up the process to more transparency, to more openness, to the possibility of really pulling in some very diverse skill sets around the table, the quality of decisions actually are significantly improved. Yeah. So the second and third items on our agenda are actually calling for presence of non-executive directors, but making sure that they are also selected and appointed through a very transparent and rigorous selection process. We think those three will ensure that topics are properly discussed and analyzed before hasty decisions are taken in these top-level organizations. And the rest of the agenda actually calls for safeguarding measures and ensuring that it's not enough to set up a diverse, board or senior leadership team, but making sure that we create the inclusive and psychologically safe environments for the underrepresented groups to be able to voice their valuable ideas and also be contributing to the successful and effective management of the organization.
I like that because you mentioned the 30% women getting to the boards as an objective. It's kind of like the similar ratio that we want to have at least for women. And then another interesting point that you mentioned there is the conversation around diversity. It's not only, I heard a quote once that I liked a lot, which said diversity leads to wisdom. And I think that's what we need in boards. But again, it has to be tied to empowerment, which I think is what you're trying to get at. And that actually reminded me of a panel where you participated a couple of years ago. I think it was with Maggie Murphy, and you had a very interesting conversation about precisely that. It's not just getting women or whoever you want to get on the board, it's actually giving them the power to make decisions and not just to call it, put pretty numbers on the board, let's say.
Exactly.
So I like that. And what has been the reach or the influence that you've been able to get through this program so far?
I think it's always going to be slow progress. We're not expecting things to change overnight, needless to say. But it's creating the awareness that in this very competitive world of global sports, one way to get ahead of competition is to really strengthen your, top-level executives. And boards are the best place to start in it. And we also think that there is a generational change that is happening. I've been in football now 24 years. And of course, the growth in the 90s was very much as a result of people who were in power. So we are all very grateful to their vision. But equally, they had a different way of understanding of leadership, let's say. And I sat on several boards since 2000, sometimes as the CEO, sometimes as a board member. And it always intrigued me how very competent people end up losing their voice in that boardroom simply because they don't want to challenge authority. They don't want to say out of favor.
Wow.
And, we would convene after a board meeting and I would say, why didn't you say something, you know, that was important?
Yeah.
This topic was important to you. And they would say, well, nothing's going to change and not worth a felt. And we're unfortunately seeing that a lot in our surveys as women in football. We every year do surveys with our membership. And recently, once again, our members told us that 89% of women either face or witness discrimination in the workplace. Less than 20% choose to report it, because when we ask why didn't you report it, they say, I reported before, nothing happened, or I'm afraid of the consequences. So we have put women in the organizations, but have not provided that psychologically safe environment where they can, you know, express their concerns about the culture in the organization.
Right.
And change is difficult. We all know that. Change is slow, but we need to keep pushing for it.
Definitely. And actually, this ties well to one of the questions that I wanted to ask you. Because as you said, you've had a brilliant career in football so far. What advice would you give for those women that are aspiring to become the leaders of tomorrow in football?
First of all, I think building your expertise in one area is very, very important. For me, it was always finance. I'm an ex-investment banker, CFA, you know, charter holder, and I was always the go-to person in the room for anything that relates to financial matters, regulations, financial fair play. Galatasaray is still a publicly traded company, so anything related to capital market sports regulations. So that expertise gives you the automatic authority and respect in an organization. Secondly, we talk a lot about networking, and I cannot stress the importance of it, because a lot of opportunities in my career actually came through my network, not necessarily, you know, post about a position search that I've seen and applied. It usually came through my network. But in networking, internal networking in an organization is extremely important as well. Everyone thinks networking is really building your contact base outside, but no, you know, being very keyed into all the developments in your own organization and being close to the decision makers and the influencers in the organization is an important one. And the third is we're faced with a lot of dilemmas in the workplace where we want to call out certain things or talk about things that matter to us. But again, going back to that psychological safety point, or for some reason, maybe lack of confidence or belief in the system, people start losing their voices. So one important aspect is to have the courage to really come out and say what you think and show your true beliefs. So I think that's the difference a little bit of fitting in versus belonging.
Yeah.
And as women, I think we perform much better when we think that we belong in an organization. But if we're having to hide what we truly think or who we really are in order to fit in this predominantly male environment, then we're really losing touch with our authentic selves. So for me, it's very important to be able to actually challenge that status quo and the internal culture in the organization. And last but not least, life is never a straight line. We all have our downturns and periods where things do not go the way we would want them to go. And building that resilience and starting off again and again and again. If you look at my story, I had several setbacks and obstacles in my career, but I always approached it with the same rigor and enthusiasm and the same ambition.
Yeah.
To get back and run again.
It's funny because one of the main themes that I speak with a lot of female leaders in football is that the journey is the reward. It's not so much the destination you're looking for, it's really what goes along the way. And I think it's an important lesson, and I really like the pillars that you said. You know, expertise, networking, courage, resilience. But at the end of the day, everything is kind of like a journey that you just need to travel and just look back upon and be proud. No.
And our advice to women who participate in our professional development programs as women in football is not just go with the flow, but try to take control. I think we're very good at, marketing things for our organization or setting the strategy of our organization. Why not, build the strategy for yourself and for your career plan? Why don't you work on your personal branding and how you market yourself to the football stakeholders? So it's all about taking control of your destiny.
A lot of the successful people, they're very good at actually positioning themselves to be or to have those opportunities. Anyway, Ebru, this has been a great conversation. I just have one more question that I want to ask you, which kind of like ties to one of the pillars that you said, which is networking. You've been at many World Football Summit events. Why is it important for, initiatives like, the Open Door Glass Agenda to be visible, to be, let's say, have exposure, and what benefit can it get from being at an event like World Football Summit?
The events like this, I think, again, we teach about networking in our leadership courses, and we say that you need to be intentional and targeted. And before going to an event like this, really identify why you're going, what you want to achieve out of it, and who are the people in the event who can help you in your future the growth plan, personal growth plan. But equally, keep an open mind. I've made such interesting contacts with people that I didn't intend to necessarily speak to, but in line getting a coffee, speak to the person behind you. At lunch, go sit at a table where you don't know anybody. I know it's scary and daunting for some people, especially if they're introverts, but believe me, the room is full of people as scared as you, to meet new people and to network.
I'm actually one of those, but I really appreciate that, and I appreciate this conversation, Ebru. This has been great. Thank you for joining the podcast today.
Thank you for inviting me.
And looking forward to seeing, more about the Open Door Glass Agenda.
Thank you.
Thank you.